Hey everybody, it's David R. Becker here with BeckerArt, and I'm here today to give you a couple of tips on how to scrub out your watercolors when they're dry after you get done painting and you have a couple mistakes and even when you're in the painting process and you find that you did something wrong, you can scrub out in watercolor. A lot of times people think that it's not possible, but it is very possible. And I'm going to show you today that it is possible. And we're going to take two older paintings that I had that I needed to scrub things out because there's something wrong with them. And so I'm going to show you how to scrub. All right, let's go to the tabletop here and just give you an idea of how to do that. So here's a painting I did of a bird, and it ended up to me, I thought that the bird was way too large. You know, his chest is way and belly is way out here. And I think if I cropped in a little bit, that would be really nice. And instead of throwing it away or scrubbing it all out, I'm going to scrub a little bit of this away, a little bit of this area. And a lot of this depends on the paper that you use. If you have a paper that absorbs a real lot, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. But if you have a paper that where it's just on top, you know, like a hot press or a harder surface, it's going to stay on top. But there's many ways you can rub, and one way is you can do it with magic eraser, the Mr. Clean magic erasers, or they have ones like that. And you can rub with that. You can rub with a scrubbing brush. These are called scrubbing brushes. They're little short things. They're little. You can take like a acrylic or oil painting brush, and you can just chop it. You can just cut that area off, or you just use a more stiffer bristle brush, like this one right here. And all my brushes are Holbein brushes, except for this one. This one is just a really cheap brush. It's made for actually for masking fluid, and this one is just really short. You know, really short bristles on there, so you can just rub and stuff. And so the first thing you want to do is take a little bit of water on your brush and get some paper towel ready, because what you have to do is you wet the surface where the area where you want to take it off. You know, the watercolor to kind of rejuvenate it. And so I'm going to go right in here, and I'm just going to wet it first, not rubbing at all at first. I'm just going to wet it and kind of hopefully rejuvenate the medium underneath it, the watercolor. Now, if you're using Holbein, you're in luck, because Holbein doesn't have Ox Gall in it. So this is a good reason to use Holbein, is because they don't use Ox Gall. And then on the palette, you can see that it doesn't dry out. So here, see, I'm just kind of rubbing it back to the white of the paper. And I'm not going to get totally to the white of the paper, but that's okay, because I don't need it to get it all the way to the paper. I just need to get the pigment off of there, because I'm going to be covering it again with the yellow and such and whatever was there. I'm just moving it in a little bit. It's just he has too large a chest, and we're gonna rub a little bit of the background too, so we can just kind of make that soft edge right now. And as you can tell, I'm not rubbing and scrubbing really hard. I'm just lightly wetting it first, and then I just apply the water and lightly rub, and then I take my paper towel and I just dab over it. And this painting, I'm sure, is about 3 years old, and so it shows you that you can go back in and rub it. And it also shows you that watercolor, if not protected behind glass, it could, you know, it could be ruined if it gets wet. Some people like to use varnish on their, you know, acrylic varnish on top of their watercolors, which is, you know, nothing wrong with that. You can do that if you want to protect your watercolors. And so here now I've got it pretty much down to where it's going to be light here. And then so when I reapply, first off, I'm going to wait until it's wet, or until it's dry, and then I can go back in there. And now the background will look ruined, right? Because I'm scraping it, I'm rubbing it, but it won't, because I'll show you later how to then take the paint and apply it in a wet wash later. But first I have to let it dry, and I'll go back in here. I just want to get his, right here, I want to get his chin or whatever, that part a little bit shorter too, and just make it a little bit smaller than it is. I'm just going to leave it like this now, and I'm going to go to another painting. I'm going to show you while this one dries. And I'll just dab here a little bit to give it a faster chance to dry a little faster. So it looks, you know, kind of messy right now, but that's okay. I'll take care of that later by applying pigment on top of that and making it a little bit smaller, the bird's chest and stuff. And I think still need to get a little bit of this out of there. So again, just really lightly rub. You can, like I said, you can use a bigger brush like this for bigger areas. Sometimes you can even use one of these chip brushes. You can cut the tops off and then just go like that too. You can also use a magic eraser like this. You can rub it a little bit and it does take it off. You just always got to worry that you don't rub too hard and ruin the paper. You know, you can just really lightly rub. You don't have to scrub it. You know, I'm calling it scrubbing it out, but I'm really just lightly touching it and just kind of leaving it so that I'm not wrecking the paper. I don't want to wreck the paper. And so let me put this aside and I'm going to show you something else I'm going to do here. So this one right here, I'm going to put glasses on them. I drew a little glasses on there. And you can also take and use these things in scrubbing out when you're using stencils. Stencils is another way of doing it. So if I had a round circle here and take a little round puck or whatever I have, I could actually rub around the outer edge. But what I want to do is go on the inside, and there's a little line here. I don't know if you can see that. I drew a little line around for like round glasses. I'm just going to put some round glasses on this guy. And just to show you, it was already done, but you know, it's always good to show you. And so I'm going to do it upside down because I want to scrub here. And this time I'm going to use the bigger brush. It's going to go in here and just really lightly wet it first. And this I may not even have to go back in afterwards. I may not have to go in and then put another color on top. I may just use it the way it is. And when you're doing like glass, because glass is transparent, you don't really see it. You just see highlights. You know, it just reflects the sun sometimes, or the light. And so this part, if I make it a little bit lighter on the bottom and make it darker on the top, it'll look like it's just a piece of glass in front of his eye. You can disturb some of his eye here too, so that it looks like you're going, and there's like a little glare, like right across his eye. So see, already I've got the bottom here, and you notice I didn't take the paper towel yet, because I'm kind of wiping my brush on the paper towel and picking up the paint, so that if I take it down, a lot of times it takes everything too much. And if it looks pretty good like that, you know, where it's starting to be, let me put it back so I see what it looks like. So see how that already looks like a little bit of glass, like the his lens on his glasses. My top part here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just rubbing very lightly with a wet brush. And again, if you just put a little water down first, let it sit for a second. You know, just let it sit there a little second, and lightly rub a little bit. And if you want to make it blurry, and this is also a way of softening an edge too. If you really later on, let's say I wanted this edge soft, I could just go in there and just soften it like this. And you just leave it. You know, don't dab with your brush or with your paper towel, because you're pulling out then the paint. This way it's just going to bleed that area and soften that edges. So here I'm going to kind of go in here and kind of soften the edge of this glass again, so that it looks like diffused, and maybe it makes it look blurry because you're looking through glass. And then where it isn't blurry, that's going to where the glass isn't. And then I also can put a dark line or a shadow along it and stuff. So just again, you can scrub things out. Now I also noticed I didn't put any highlights on his lip. Let me use my smaller brush and see how his lip looks like it's bleeding actually. But what I'll do is I'll make it look like he has little red lips, not red lipstick, but I'm just gonna put a little bit of highlight on it. And I mean, you could do it with white paint and put the highlight on, but this is another way of doing it. Just another, and like if you're gonna enter some of these societies where you can't use white, then you can rub it. You can scrub it out back to the paper. You can even scrape it out too. I've even got like a scraper. If you re-wet it, you can scrape little hairs. But this is called about scrubbing. But let's say I wanted to put little hairs here. I would just wet it again. And this has been dry. This painting also has been dry for many years. And so I just went through my collection of paintings that I've never done anything with, and I just looked in there and see I can scrape a little bit. I can just scrape a little away little hairs, because it rejuvenates the pigment below, and it gets it churned up again. And so you can rub. I know a lot of people think that you should not ever rub. But no, you can, because it's durable paper. Again, this is Stonehenge Aqua, which is on the top, very it doesn't absorb in as much as like an Arches does, and so I can just rub really easily and take out. You can do this also when you're on your like second or third wash. Let's say you forgot something, or let's say this whole face didn't turn out. You can really lightly rub the whole face out, and then do it again. You know, you go again on top of it. Now in a second, I'll show you how to do it again once you get it rubbed out a little bit. Going in here, this I'm going to dab a little bit because it's not getting light enough. So I'm just going to do the bottom here. I mean, I had not planned of putting glasses on them, but there's a way of doing it, because people think that with watercolor you can never make changes. Like once they got that first wash, you're done. You know, it's just, that's not true though. You can really do a lot with watercolor afterwards. You just have to watch yourself and don't ruin the paper. And most of these papers are, you know, premium papers are pretty good. Now, if you buy a cheap paper where it's going to ruin the paper itself, then yes, it's a little bit more difficult to do it on that. But on most of the watercolors, I know they use pretty premium papers. And dab there a little bit, put a little bit of a glare across his glasses. You know, you can do that if you want. You don't have to put the glare in. You can, I'll do it on this side too, just to make it look the same, because usually it's going to look pretty close to the same, because it's on the same thing. It's the same kind of shape and stuff. So I'm going to take this a little bit more. And so there we have. All right, so there we have the glasses to make it look like there's actually glass in front. And actually, I'm gonna once this is dry, I will go back in with the dark parts and then put in the glasses again. So it's afterwards. So now this should be dry by now. So we're going back to the bird. And so how do we fix this, right? Because it is pretty you know, rough, and it looks like it's been scrubbed. Well, it has been scrubbed, and so what you have to do is you apply water to it and then float your pigment, which is one of my big things to do, is float your pigment. And so the first thing I want to do is get the shape of the bird back. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and wet the background first, and not the bird itself, and just make it a hard edge line. And then I'll come back in with the inside and do whatever I had done there before. And so I'm just going to use my regular brush now, and I'm going to take a little bit of the color that I already have back here, and let me put on my glasses so I can see what I'm doing. 1 second. Let me just get my glasses here. Sorry about that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet. And I can wet with a little bit of a color so I can see where I'm going. I'm just going to kind of come down here. And if you need to draw exactly where you're going, but I know that if I just make it a lot skinnier in front here, and I went with a blue that's in the background, but that's not what it's going to be in the end. I'm still going to go in there. I just picked up something on my palette here that's been dirty, and I will go back in and re-wet it. This just helps me to see where I'm going with the water. It's more of a tint that I'm putting down here right now. And so now I'm going to wet this area, and wet it a little bit farther than where you're going to actually work at, because if I wet it a little bit farther, this is going to do nothing. If it's just clear water, which it is, it's just clear water. So if I go a little bit out here, nothing's going to happen to that over there. If I would rub it, then something would happen, but I'm real lightly putting it on there. And you can also use one of these spray bottles if you want to re-wet. You can spray it. It's a mister. You know, you put a mist on it, and you can do that too. But I want to make it so it's wet, so that I can float some pigment on top of there, so I can give my my look like a fresh look again. So I'm going to go on this side of the bird here. So now it's pretty wet, evenly wet. And I'm not going to touch this area. Well, this is kind of looks like it was rubbed one time before. So I'm going to go a little bit farther. And I will push these colors in over this way now. And so see already the bird, the shape is a little bit, you know, he had the big chest in there. I cut him in down a little bit, and so he's looking a little bit better now. I put him on a diet. So he's looking a little bit better there. So now we're going to go with these little, this is like a brownish color here. So I'm going to make a little bit of this is a midazoline brown. Now I have some blue in it, I think. So I'll take some ultramarine here. It's kind of a gray, bluish gray, but notice like it's going to be soft edge because I wet it. That's how you get a soft edge, is you wet the surface. I'm going to make it a little bit darker down here. And then it looks like it goes to like a light blue. And so I'm going to take some of this light blue here. And I don't have to have my brush too wet because I'm floating it on top of the surface, and it's going to mix itself together. So I'm just going to go in here, mix this up, and try to make it look like it's floating for one, and that it has the same kind of values and color that's already there. If you don't know what the color is, just test it. Just test it first, and if it's not the right thing, don't keep on going. Just pick up. It looks like there's a little bit of quinacridone gold in this. A little bit of gold. So let's put a little gold. And it doesn't have to be exact colors in here, but I'm going to pick up maybe a little bit of this orange too, because that way it'll look like there's a little bit of this on this side too. You can make it something new. You don't have to go with what's already there. So already, see how it's giving that look of like you're getting rid of the lookingness of the scrubbing, the lookingness. I'm always making up words, but when you see that it looks like it's fresh, that's what we want. We don't want it to look like you went in there and scrubbed. So I'm getting rid of the scrubbing part. Down here we got like a light blue. So I'm gonna take the light blue and then just kind of float it. You can take opaque colors, light colors on top of dark colors, as long as you float it. As long as the pigment is it's an opaque color, but if I'm floating it on top, it will cover up what my scratches are if I have that. But because I'm floating it, it's looking very fresh. And that's what we want. We want it to look fresh, and maybe there's a little bit of softness. You can see those little fingers that happen in there. And that's a little bit of an opaque color, but it kind of matches what's up here. So I want to kind of bring that down through there. And here's a little bit of purple, so I'm going to take a little bit of lavender, maybe put a little lavender there with a little bit of purple to kind of make it look like it's on one side of the branch is on the other. It's really important that you do that so that it doesn't look like there's a wall or something that's there. Bring it on this side. And if I wanted to, I could re-wet this whole area here too, if I feel that was necessary, but I don't think it will be. So now, I sprayed a little bit of that's all over. So here I'm going to wipe this and just let that be soft edged. All right, so look at how much we've already taken out of him. Now we can't go into the bird yet and get rid of that stuff until this is dry. So, and actually you'll understand what to do is you just wait for that to dry, then go in here, re-wet that, and float your color of the bottom of the bird in there. So we're going to leave that one aside now, but you saw how I cropped and I can scrub out. Here, I noticed I scrubbed out branches before. I was testing out the brush, and so if you want to make, let's say, these branches look a little bit like you want them lighter on one side, watch this. I just real lightly take your brush, and I can just rub out a little bit. And there's nothing wrong. This is not a like a law or a rule that you should not wipe out. I know a lot of people think that rubbing out makes it look messy, but not sometimes, because sometimes you're using it to your advantage to make it back to the light. And it's easier this way. And a lot of times if you're doing portraits, if you want just a little hit of something at the top of the bird, I think I actually scrubbed that out on the top of the bird a little bit, so I can just soften the edge. So you can just soften the edge there a little bit. And if I feel like it looks like it's starting to be scrubbed, then take a color and float it into that water that you just used for scrubbing, and it'll soften up right away. All right, and so this blue probably should be on this side, and I would wet that and just bring it down, but I'm not going to do that for this demonstration. I'm just going to let you guys do that. I want to just show you what I'm going to do now with the glasses. And so what I'm going to do is, let's say I wanted to bring a color into the glass too. Let's say there's a reflected light of something. Now there really isn't, but you can also, if that looks like it's dirty, I can re-wet that area, and I can put white. I can put a little bit of white in there and then just let that float. If I didn't get it light enough, people sometimes say that you shouldn't use white, but in this case, I can make it look like it's still transparent, and but using white. Because let's say you couldn't get back to the white of the paper, and you definitely wanted to have a white or something, then just use white. It'll be fine. It will float there, and it'll look like it is the paper. If you float it, not if it's thick, because this is watercolor, transparent watercolor. But if I float it on top of the surface, it'll give it that little bit of a glow. So put that at that. Now I'm going to take and just draw really quickly, paint the rims, And then I'm going to show you how to do highlights, little highlights. And actually I want to do a little highlight on this, like if this is metal, you can just rub a little bit here. And again, you can use white for this, but I always first try to scrub out of the thing because it gives you a soft edge when you're scrubbing out. So it's a little bit nicer that way. A little bit of the metal that's going there. And then pencil lines you can erase afterwards too. You can erase it once it's dry or paint. Some people think that you can't do that. You can't rub through the watercolor, but you can. You can take needle rubber eraser. I had one here. I'll show you. Put it somewhere. Where did I put it? I can't show you. I don't know where it is. All right, so we'll just go on. Let's see. All right, so now we're going to take the dark. So I'm just going to take a dark line and give it on the edge, so I can just here and there. And something when you're doing like a frame of something, already you can tell that this guy has glasses on, right? So you don't have to identify the whole rim. If it's a real tiny little rim that on his glasses, you don't need to show every little part of it. Like I'm not going to do anything over here because that's already showing enough that the glasses are, you know, they're right there because of that darkness right there. I'm just going to take it here. I'm just going to take it up here a little bit, make it a little bit darker, and throw a little shadow. And of course, there's the eye part that, you know, the thing that holds it against your nose. And so I'll just put that in there. Here, I'm going to put it over the nose part, and then it's in there. And just make parts. Again, don't paint everything. I don't paint everything in there. And so the scrubbing out makes it look like the glasses are ready. This just kind of gives it the shadows on the side of the rim. And of course, goes back here. It also depends on how detailed your painting is to make it look like what it is. And so if it's, you know, if it's so detailed you see every little hair, then of course you're going to make this even more tighter than I've been making it. But this is a little bit looser painting. And put that in there like that. And again here, I'm going to scrub out a little bit more for his lip. A little highlight. And how about some of the hairs on his, maybe there's a couple of hairs like here. And you can use a really skinny brush too to rub and stuff, and you can get the little hairs. I know that a lot of times you can wet too and scrape. You can wet a little bit and then scrape with an X-Acto knife or like with one of these cards, like a room key. You just scrape in there after it's wet a little bit. And sometimes they'll even make it dark instead of light because you're scraping into the paper. But I'm just going to scrape a little bit more. So scrubbing out, that's what this video is about, to show you how to scrub out. And just scrub out one more thing right here to make it a little bit, and how to soften your edges. And let's say you wanted to do the whole painting over again, and you felt there's a lot of times I've seen people, and it works, where you take the whole thing underneath water and scrub really lightly with maybe a bigger brush, like a big brush like this. Rub out the area. Let's say you didn't like that in there, and you like the drawing and everything, but everything didn't work out in the first wash. Scrub it out. You know, you can do that. This paper is very durable. Most premium papers are very durable enough that you can take a wash and just scrub. And so I'm going to scrub this a little bit soft here. I'm going to show you how to soften up an edge. Just real lightly put water on there. Always put water on it first, and then lightly scrub. Just lightly, just to scrub in there. And then I got a soft edge, right? See how instantly that becomes a soft edge? That's after it's dry now. That's not while it's wet. You can do that with paint. But again, sometimes you don't get it in the first wash, so just don't be afraid of scrubbing. All right, so that's it for this little exercise here to show you that you can scrub, and don't be afraid to scrub. This one, I'm going to put it in there later. But I'm just going to wet it. Here, I'll do that right now real quickly. Just going to wet it because this is dry already, it looks like. Yep. So I'm just going to wet this area. I'm even wetting with my scrubbing brush. Going to wet it down this way a little bit. And because that looks a little bit worn, like because I did scrub it, but I'm going to use a little bit of darker colors that were down there before. Just float them. and just lay it in there with a big amount of pigment. But again, the pigment is floating, so you're going to get a soft edge. I want the soft edge, and I want it to sit on top, and it's just going to roll over the edge. Give it a nice roll here, and make it look like it's a brand new wash, and nothing ever happened there. All right, so there you go. That was our little lesson for today. Scrub out when you need to get back to some of the lights, and don't feel afraid that it's going to ruin everything. But make sure you know what you want to do before you actually scrape out an area. I knew I needed to make this guy light, a little bit thinner, and so now he's got a little bit of a a little cut there. So we got to put him on a diet, the little bird. All right. If you want to see more of these videos, go to my channel at BeckerArt, David R. Becker at BeckerArt, and go to my website at BeckerArt.net and pick up where my channel is on YouTube. And I will put a few more of these up every once in a while. And I do have a newsletter that comes out every Tuesday, which this will be in. And so you can sign up for that on my website also. So thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot for coming by and checking us out. Go ahead and scrub.